Welcome to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. Legal issues simplified through real client stories and real-world experiences. Creating simplicity in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to another episode of Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd.
Thanks, Brad. As a business and healthcare law firm, we meet a lot of interesting people and learn their amazing stories. As you know, this season we are spicing things up a bit. We're here to talk about OPP, other people's problems.
Michael, for those listening for the first time this season, why don't you tell them what are we doing with OPP?
We're going to tell public stories in the news and then kind of conclude with some legal analysis like we usually do that hopefully will be applicable to our audience.
Yeah. So audience members and Riley, I'm going to apologize right now in advance. Michael was kind of leading me into what today's story is going to be about, and we're going to have to really control our teenage 14-year-old boy selves today, Michael.
Yes, it's extra spicy. When I say we're spicing things up, yeah, we're going to have to be on our best behavior.
Yes, we're probably getting an E rating at some point.
And there may be some editing that'll have to happen.
Yeah.
But I started thinking, Brad, about us having to, control our 13-year-old sense of humor, and it reminded me of a story I read this week. I read a story about a school district in Missouri that is bringing back spankings. And basically what they said is that if all other disciplinary actions fail, a student can be spanked with a paddle.
All right. Does feel like we're having a little going back in time here to the 80s or whatever it was.
Yeah. I had a little PTSD response myself, but the parent has to approve of the spanking, so I guess that's the modern version of it, is the parents have to say they're okay with it. But once parents have approved, if a teacher can use reasonable physical force on a student, again, if all other disciplinary actions fail. But here's the lawyer speak, Brad. Besides reasonable physical force, they're not allowed to give a chance of bodily injury or harm.
Yeah, reasonable physical force. That really sounds like a lot of lawyer talk there. I'm going to assume this leaves the chance for some serious litigation, Michael.
No doubt, yeah. But here's a kicker that was even more surprising. I read in this article that corporal punishment is legal in 19 states. So apparently the Supreme Court decided in 1977 that spanking was constitutional. Who knew? And allowed each state to set its own rules.
Yeah, this morning when I woke up, Michael, I really didn't think I'd have to hear or think about saying the right to give a spanking is a state right.
Yep, it is, Brad. And this article said that 69,000 children were punished physically in the 2017 to 2018 school year. They didn't have any more recent data. Probably can blame that on COVID.
Yeah. And how many of them had the last name Byrd?
Oh, such a fair question. Actually, I have one child who probably contributed to that number. Okay, well, here it is, Brad. Let's bring it down to you, which I know you love.
Yeah, I'm about to say that's the best.
Were you spanked in school growing up?
You know what? Unlike your school, which I know stories about, my school did not allow spanking. However, I will say that that rule actually did not apply in my house. My parents were not afraid to dish out a good spanking, and pretty much audience members, I'm quite certain I deserved almost every single one of them. But the worst spanking...
I agree, by the way.
Yeah. But the worst spanking I ever received was the one I actually didn't get. And I can't remember. I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, and my mom spanked me. And I remember turning around looking at her and like, well, that didn't hurt. And she's like, well, just wait till your father gets home. And that's all she had to say. And the rest of the day, I was completely stressed out. I still remember my dad coming home that night, and I remember like just dreading to go downstairs. But nothing happened. He never spanked me that day or even the next day. And all I can tell you is my mom is wicked smart because she had some like mind game she was playing with me because I behaved the rest of that day, probably the rest of the week, rest of the year. And obviously I'm 50-something years old and it still haunts me. So it worked. How about you, Michael?
Well, I was thinking I was going to tell you about school, which I will, but just hearing you talk about your parent spankings kind of brought some flashbacks to me on that front as well. Shocker. So my mom was taken lightly as well, and my sister and I used to mock her. She would chase us around the house with a fly swatter, and we would be laughing. But my dad, that was a different story.
Oh, yeah.
We were terrified. And my most memorable spanking was when I was, I think, 5 years old, and I stole Hot Wheels from our neighbor. and it, I mean, talk about haunting me. I can go in detail about that, how that whole scene played out. And what even cracks me up more is this, I don't think it'll be the last time we talk about Hot Wheels today.
No, I think you're actually foreshadowing to where we're going. So, Michael, so let's...
Well, before we get into the story, Brad, I do have, you asked about spanking at school.
Yeah.
And yes, we did get spanked at school. In fact, when I was in middle school, they were renowned for the use of the palm leaf.
Okay.
Yes. And so you actually know the one of the football coaches was a gentleman named Richard Bohack because his wife worked with us at our old firm. And so you would see one of our other partners and I kind of start flinching whenever we'd have the Christmas party and we'd see Coach Bohack walk in.
Yes.
But I got the gratuitous ones. So back then, there was no parental consent. If you happened to walk by a coach while they were holding the palm leaf, you would get a swat. Our friend and partner, former partner, Oliver, he had much more intentional swats because of some decisions he would make at school.
I can, number one, yes, I remember all of this because I remember him still flinching when he walked by the coach. He's like, "Hey, coach." And you could tell sweat was already building up on poor Oliver's face. But let's go try to figure this. So this has to do with, what does spanking has to do with today's story?
Well, actually, Brad, it doesn't. I don't remember how I got us down this path. It's probably your fault.
Okay.
We're actually going to talk about a story of someone who got a tattoo.
Okay. Doesn't sound very exciting. Tell me what's going on here.
Well,
it's funny because nothing against tattoos. As you know, more than half our teams have a tattoo here.
Yeah, I mean, I promise it's more interesting than your reaction.
Okay.
And you're right. Half our office has a tattoo. Even you have the old frat stamp on your ankle.
Michael, we were not supposed to share personal stuff about me, so please don't talk about my tattoo.
Oh.
Do you have a tattoo?
I don't. I don't have anything against tattoos, but I'm not personally a tattoo person. My two oldest kids and my son-in-law have some ink, and so I feel like that at least gives me a little bit of street cred.
Yeah, it doesn't. Sorry, no street credit for you. So let me guess, this story has to do with a crazy face tattoo?
You're cold, Brad.
Oh. Neck tattoo that says compliance is cool or CPOM.
Now, those would be awesome tattoos, but that's not it. But you are getting a little warmer.
Tramp stamp?
A little warmer. You were actually closest when we were talking about spanking.
I have to say, a tattoo on someone's bottom is not very interesting.
No, I said you were close, Brad. Flip it around to the other side of a man's body to find where this tattoo was placed.
Yikes. That doesn't sound like a really good idea and does sound extremely painful.
Yes, Brad, no doubt. And I have so many questions about this, but we're going to have to bring a guest in
to help us out.
Yeah, to tell the story. And so our partner, Jeff Segal, is joining us today. He is obviously our friend and our law partner here at ByrdAdatto. Jeff is a attorney licensed in the state of California. He is a physician. He went to medical school at the Baylor College of Medicine in Texas and ended up specializing in neurosurgery. Most importantly, at least for college football season, is that he went to undergrad at the University of Texas in Austin. Hook 'em. He is a founder of Medical Justice and eMerit. This is his second time, or is it his third? It's the second time on the Legal 1-2-3s with ByrdAdatto. His wife is Shelly. Josh and Jordan are his twin children. Jeff is a cyclist, scuba diver, and climber, and has many amazing stories, including the one we're going to talk about today. Is the first time I heard it was from Jeff.
Yes.
Jeff, welcome.
Hey, glad to be here with you this morning. Thanks so much.
So
yes, we do have things to talk about.
we do, and we're going to put you on the spot right away. So Michael shared some stories. So I'm going to give you a two-part question. Hopefully you give me a two-part answer. Do you have a tat, and were you ever spanked at school?
Okay. Full disclosure, I actually do have a single tattoo. I got it when I turned 50 years old.
Sweet.
Or around the time. So think about that.
Yeah.
And what is it? It's on my shoulder. It is Euler's formula. That's spelled E-U-L-E-R. He was a Swiss mathematician, considered one of the greatest mathematicians of all time. And it is considered by mathematicians to be the most elegant formula in math. It's e to the power of I pi plus 1 equals 0. Now, I know that means nothing to many of the people in the audience, but fascinatingly, if I have my shirt off at the pool, occasionally another mathematician will come up and go, that is so cool. But I can guarantee you, I don't have data on this, but I'm pretty sure I'm the only person in North Carolina with that tattoo.
I'm going to go with fact check correct.
Yes, and that is very Jeff tattoo.
Yes.
I love it.
What about spankings at schools? Did they allow that back then?
I did get one spanking in high school from the football coach. I'm guessing it was because I was late or I didn't show up to PE. He probably enjoyed it more than I did because he was a bit of a sadist. But I probably deserved it.
Yeah.
Here I am. I actually made it through the trauma.
I wouldn't think someone who had a math formula tatted on their shoulder got a lot of spanking. So
there is some cognitive dissonance there, no doubt.
Okay.
I could go on for an hour on that shoulder tattoo, but let's keep going forward.
Yes.
We're going to come back to that. I want to follow up with a proof of that tattoo over time. That'll take up my entire back.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay. Well, we're going to take a turn to the immature here now.
Yeah.
But there is it is a fascinating story, and it actually has some legal implications. So I'll set it up a little bit for everybody. Today's story originated in Phoenix, Arizona. We're going to call our protagonist Sir Richard, and that'll reveal itself soon enough as to why that name. Jeff, tell us about the unique tattoo that our protagonist received.
So this tattoo it had the name Hot Rod on it, and it was right on square on the patient's penis. Now, you might ask, how in God's earth did he get a tattoo there? It's a decision that most people wouldn't take lightly. Apparently, he was a strip club owner, so that gives you some background, and he lost a bet.
So can I pause you? So he didn't have the mathematical tattoo already?
He did not, as best I can tell. Now, the truth is, to be fair, I don't know.
Okay. All right.
I don't know. So all I can do is speculate.
Okay. Well, I got to pause for a second, too, because that's pretty crazy. You're a doctor. We all hear the stories with doctor training. Do you have a story like that from when you were either in practice or going through medical school?
So the question is, did weird things happen either in medical school, or did we see weird things happen? And the answer is yes. I mean, we see it all the time. So is this a segue for me giving you one prototypical example?
I think we can allow it.
Can I share?
Allow.
Can I share?
Yeah.
All right. So my first year in practice, I was young and eager, enthusiastic. In the middle of the night, probably 2 a.m., 3 a.m., getting some shut-eye. My phone actually my pager went off, which dates me. And then I called the answering service, called the ER, and they introduced this. We have an interesting case. I said, whoa. It's 3 a.m. in the morning. By definition, nothing is interesting. Nothing. I said, well, hear me out. I said, okay, I'm on call. I have no choice. So he said there was a gay lovers triangle, and one of the individuals was shot through the skull with a bow and arrow.
Whoa.
The arrow entered in the base, through the base of the skull, missed the brain, went through the orbit, pushing the globe, the eyeball over. And the patient had 20/20 vision. So he had this arrow sticking out of his eye, but it didn't go through his eye. It just kind of pushed everything over. And then they said, "What do you want us to do?" So meanwhile, my wife was going, "Oh, tell me more. Tell me more." She was lying next to me, and she heard the initial "nothing's interesting." She could see that I perked up. Anyway, to fast forward and to bring this closure, I went to the ER. We did some imaging studies to make sure that the major vascular structures were not pierced by the arrow, and took this patient to the operating room and did little more than stick my boot on his face and pull it out and pray. Now we did.
Wait, did they teach you that
we
in
actually
med
did
school?
it with sterile technique or pseudo-sterile technique, and it was a bit more involved. But it did turn out that he did okay. But he was such a difficult individual. It became entirely clear why somebody had the motivation to just stick an arrow in his head.
Oh my gosh! Is that in your professional opinion, or just as a civilian?
As a civilian,
Okay.
I think everybody would agree this guy was not a friendly person.
I can't decide what hurts more in my imagery: the picture of you pulling that arrow out with your boot, or the image of getting hot rod tattooed where this guy got it tattooed.
Well, and I think, that story that Jeff just gave is a perfect example of Jeff sharing something that is, the scrub table where docs will tell you their funny stories of what happened. But I think, Michael, this kind of turned, didn't it?
Yeah. And, I guess as we shift back to Hot Rod and Sir Richard, and the loss of a bet. So I'm guessing, had some sort of connection to NASCAR, or was the bet? Do you know anything more about the backstory there?
All I know, it's a bet that I would never take. Look, let's get real. I'm not going to take a bet where if I lose, I have to eat ground glass. I'm not going to take a bet where I've got to stick cayenne pepper in my eyeball. And I'm not going to take a bet where I'm going to get a tattoo of Hot Rod on my penis if I lose. Even if I think the odds are quite high that I'm not going to lose, I still don't like those odds of how this may end up.
And this story became something worthy of us talking about, not because of that, but because of what happened next, is that the locker room talk that Brad was alluding to, someone's discovered this unique tattoo and felt the need to share. We'll refer to this doctor as Dr. Gossip. So, Jeff, why don't you kind of continue the story and tell us what happened when, after Dr. Gossip saw Sir Richard's tattoo?
Okay, so I need to set it up a little bit more. Dr. Gossip was chief resident of an academic surgical program that's very famous, or at least well renowned, and they were performing a laparoscopic cholecystectomy, taking out the gallbladder. So most of the activity was going to be just below the ribs, but the patient had, if I understood correctly, a catheter placed in the penis just to allow for drainage of urine. Actually, I don't know why this patient had a Foley catheter. It's typically, the case is so short, you probably wouldn't even put one in nowadays, but at the time, for whatever reason, they put one in. Lo and behold, what did they notice? They noticed there was a tattoo of Hot Rod on this patient's penis. Now remember, all of the action was going to be just below the rib cage, yet now eyes were focused, or at least the chief resident's eyes were focused on the groin and the moniker Hot Rod. So he snapped a photo.
And so he snapped a photo and it just ended there?
It did not end there. He snapped a photo. Who knows what that trajectory of the photo was going to be, and the story gets murky, but two of the attending surgeons learned about this, and I'm guessing the photo got transmitted to them. Details are fuzzy, but more than one. It didn't end up on his phone. It ended up on multiple people's phones or emails or whatever. It didn't. What happened in the OR didn't stay in the OR.
Yes, this is not Vegas.
And I feel like, and I don't know how much of this is verified, but that the picture actually spread outside of even the confines of this, and that it became a national story. Is that right?
it did become a national story. So the patient learned about it, got a telephone call from somebody at the hospital. Then the chief resident gets on the phone saying, I wanted you to hear about this before you heard it in the news. And so he had a chance to come clean and just say what happened. He said he was sorry. He had no intent of having the spread. He only told maybe one person, two people. And then, when you tell more than one person, sometimes news does get out. Gossip doesn't stay put, particularly a story like this. And of course, the patient was livid. In fact, he said it still burned him up, when he hears about it. And this was well after the fact. But this did indeed become a national story. How the public learned of the patient's name is even more of a mystery. But when the story, and this is how I heard it, when the story broke, it described a tattoo, the word hot rod on the penis, and apparently there aren't millions of people in America who have the word hot rod tattooed on their penis. And so one person, a tattoo artist, said, that's my work, my handiwork. And he may have connected the dots and publicized the patient's name. It may have been publicized in other ways. I don't know, but certainly the public is aware of it. It's in the articles, and then this became a real challenge for the surgeon, who I'm sure intended nothing. I'm sure he intended no harm.
Yeah, and I guess that goes just a perfect example of the hot rod that. Can't say. Just move on.
Settle down, boys. Settle down.
Well, so he got into some hot water, and I believe even the medical board came a-calling, and we can talk a little bit about that on the other side. I think for Brad's sake, who seems to be having a hard time over here, we'll just pause here and not keep going, because it may take a worse turn, and we'll go into commercial and talk a little bit more about this and dive deeper on kind of some of the legal implications.
Many business owners use legal counsel as a last resort rather than as a proactive tool that can further their success. Why? For most, it's the fear of unknown legal costs. ByrdAdatto's Access Plus program makes it possible for you to get the ongoing legal assistance you need for one predictable monthly fee. That gives you unlimited phone and email access to the legal team, so you can receive feedback on legal concerns as they arise. Access Plus, a smarter, simpler way to access legal services. Find out more. Visit ByrdAdatto.com today.
Welcome back to Legal 123's The ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, Brad Adatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd. We're still here with our guest and partner, Jeff Segal, the owner of the coolest tattoo on the shoulder ever heard of by a mathematician. Now, Michael, this season our theme is OPP, and we just discovered, first off, that Jeff has a tattoo. But secondly, we learned about a very personal and recognizable tattoo that, as we were talking, that it became so recognizable because a guy named Howard Stern helped publicize this tattoo itself. And I guess that's probably a good thing from a legal perspective.
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, if you reset, kind of telling this through the lens of setting it up for a legal discussion, this patient has a photo taken, that is his personal health information.
Yes.
That photo ends up going, out to one person and going to more than one person, going ultimately to Howard Stern. And then dots are connected because the tattoo artist reveals at some point, who this is. And so all of a sudden, this patient who thought they were just getting their gallbladder removed now has the world aware of his lost bet and all the implications of that lost bet. But there's some legal stuff that we got to talk about how that this fun and somewhat painful story actually connects to the law. So let's talk first about the big law, HIPAA. I think there's probably a lot of people in the audience who are thinking that's got to violate HIPAA. That's HIPAA with one P and two A's for the audience's sake. So let's bounce it around and kind of share some thoughts on how HIPAA applies and why it matters. And we'll start with the good doctor, and then Brad, you can go after Jeff.
Okay.
So HIPAA describes how you need to take care of protected health information and not disclose it to any individuals unless you have written authorization or unless allowed by statute. And for most of us, that means if something takes place in the operating room, it's protected health information, which means that information cannot be disclosed or shared without the patient's written permission, without their authorization, or unless there's a statutory exception. And we won't belabor what statutory exceptions are because none apply in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, this is information that should have stayed in the operating room.
Yeah, completely agree with Jeff. And, in season 3, Michael, of the podcast, we actually had an entire show in private parts create privacy problems. We didn't know about Hot Rod back then. But as Jeff said, the whole purpose of HIPAA is the controls that you're trying to put in place to protect patients' information and how they use and disclose it. And obviously the primary goal is also to ensure that individuals' health information remains confidential. But believe it or not, it's still there they're supposed to, the free flow of information, of health information is necessary. And so what the HIPAA does look at is it necessary to provide or promote high-quality health care and protect the public's health and well-being. And as the audience can imagine, in this case, I don't know of any exception that anyone could say a medical provider taking a picture of a gentleman's tattoo on his manly part and sharing it is not necessary to provide and promote health quality in health care. It's probably the exact opposite.
Yeah. And there's people may be thinking, okay, well, it's not like this tattoo said this is the name of the person. And so there's something to this, is it identifiable, whatever it is, the tattoo. And so, yes, if, something's unique to that person, the tattoo is, to where that helps someone would be able to see the photo and know who he was, then there's risk there. And obviously the tattoo artist knew who he was. I'm thinking that if a doctor took a picture of Jeff's math equation and circulated it, that we could have some HIPAA risk on that front as well.
Yeah. And Michael, for audience members who are in the aesthetic market or cosmetic market, they might be thinking, well, I've always heard that, HIPAA doesn't really apply to me. But as we've said in other times, there are state patient privacy rules that they have to be aware of.
Yeah, and that's the bigger thing we have to talk about with our kind of elective medicine clients, is that the big picture is patients have privacy rights, and they have them whether HIPAA applies or not. And so you have to look also at state privacy laws, even if HIPAA doesn't apply, and if it does apply, and you have to look at what sort of common law rights does a patient have, as it relates to violation of their privacy, and so there is. It can get kind of murky because the HIPAA does not in of itself create a right for someone to sue. So that's more of a regulatory, the government comes a knock-in violation that can really lead to fines. And typically the state violations are going to be more fine-driven, but you still have the patient rights that could lead to individual litigation. And collectively, it all ends in the same place, which is you need to protect this information and understand that no matter how funny you think it is, or how much your 13-year-old sense of humor gets tickled, it's a bad idea to go and take a picture of it and send it to your friends.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that in this case, if I remember correctly, this person was disciplined. And a lot of times there could be state rules they may have violated, but even if in a state, let's just pretend that taking pictures of someone's manly part and sending to everyone that you want is not a violation of some state rule. Generally speaking, with the boards, they have the catch-all, which is unethical and unprofessional conduct. And those are the easiest ones for medical boards to wrap their brains around, saying, I'm not sure what you did, but what you did was wrong. And that just and in this particular case, him taking that picture and sending it is obviously an easy one from the say. That's very unprofessional of you as a physician. Now, Jeff, love to hear your final thoughts.
Yeah, so it is true that there is a large catch-all with the boards of medicine related to unprofessional conduct, and much of it is not defined. It's similar to how Justice Potter Stewart of one of the older Supreme Courts described obscenity. He says, I may not be able to define it, but I know it when I see it. And that's the same with unprofessional conduct. But I will tell you, in Arizona, because I actually downloaded the reprimand, there was a violation of Arizona statute section 32-1401 27Z. So Z means it's down on the list. It's one of the last ones. And the violation, the conclusion of law, and there are two of them. One is engaging in sexual conduct with a current patient or a former patient within 6 months after the last medical consultation, unless the patient was a licensee spouse at the time, or immediately preceding the patient-physician relationship, was in a dating or engagement relationship with a licensee for purposes of the subdivision. Sexual conduct includes intentionally viewing a completely or partially disrobed patient in the course of treatment if the viewing is not related to patient diagnosis or treatment under current practice standards. What does that mean that I just said? It basically means that if you're operating just under the rib cage and you're taking pictures and addressing things related to the groin, arguably it's not related to the performance of a laparoscopic cholecystectomy. Although candidly, to be fair, this patient did have a Foley catheter in place, and you could imagine how if there had been some medical anomaly that required some type of diagnosis or treatment, that this section would not have applied. But because of how things played out, I think the Arizona board felt compelled to act, and the doctor signed in the dotted line. It was a letter of reprimand for and I'm reading here, for inappropriately photographing and viewing a patient's penile tattoo, and that was the end of that.
You know, Michael, and sons of physicians and hanging out with people like Jeff and clients like this, we've obviously heard a lot of sad, but for us, funny patient stories. And, as medical providers who are listening to this, we've been in the rooms where y'all are sharing it with us, and yes, they are funny, but taking that picture of identifiable photo and obviously not having the proper reps and warrants allowing you to do that, and you're posting it either on the World Wide Web or just texting to your buddies, you're clearly violating some type of patient privacy, and in Jeff's case, in Arizona, having some rules that you have to abide by, and none of which, in this case, obviously Dr. Gossip even followed by any means. But Michael, your final thoughts.
Between the pain of getting spanked for stealing hot rods and hearing about this tattoo, I think I need some licensed professional counseling to work through this, and I just hope that they don't recommend exposure therapy.
All right. Jeff, thanks for joining us today.
It was a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Well, audience members, next Wednesday's show, we will actually have to be in really good behavior because we'll have an OPP story on the Elizabeth Holmes trial. And, Michael, we have another lawyer joining us, and I think you might know this person because her name is Stephanie Byrd. And I believe that Stephanie is the same Stephanie you're married to.
Yes, it is. She is, and not to be told about this episode. Not that she would be surprised.
Thanks again for joining us today. And remember, if you like this episode, please subscribe. Make sure to give us a 5-star rating and share with your friends.
You can also sign up for the ByrdAdatto newsletter by going to our website at ByrdAdatto.com.
ByrdAdatto is providing this podcast as a public service. This podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast does not constitute legal advice, nor does it establish an attorney-client relationship. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by ByrdAdatto. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Please consult with an attorney on your legal issues.